Today's daf is daf Vav, and we're going to start with Tana Rabbanan. Right here towards the top of the daf, 4 lines down from the top. And the Gemara is going back to the study about Kishomim and the Brisa that derives from the Pasuk V'nasati Mitaratzchem B'ito Yoreh U'Malkosh, that Yoreh is Geshem that comes after you plant, and Malkosh is Geshem that comes down close to the harvest time. And now the Gemara wants to explain why we call these Geshomim with the names Yoreh U'Malkosh. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Brisa, Yoreh Shemoreh Es Habrios Lahatiach Gagosehem. It's an instruction, a horah. And that's the creatures that were created by God. And it's time for them to plaster their roofs and to protect the rain from entering into their homes. And what do they use? They use tit, kidoshelo yitanfu, gishamim bebayis. There shouldn't be tipos coming through the crevices of his roof when the rains come down. Ulahachnis, and he should take into his house es perotseim, those fruits, munachas liabish besodos, that are placed out into the fields to dry them. Kidei iskalkalu me'agsham, the rains should not ruin them. Velasos kol tzarkeim, they should take care of all their other needs. And liskonin aleim lifnei agshamim, whatever they need to prepare before the Geshamim come down. And since this Geshem, the first Geshem, which is the harbinger, so to speak, about the opening, the bringing of this new Ona of Geshamim, and people have to remember and remind themselves to prepare for the winter months, therefore it's called Yoreh. Yoreh meaning to instruct, teach. Dovar Acher, an alternative explanation, the Geshem is called, the first Geshem is called Yoreh Mishum Shemarveh U Mazbia, he says. The Hebrew translation, Marveh means that it saturates. Es ha'aretz, the land, the ground, the earth. Umashke osa ad tahom. And it brings moisture all the way down to the depths of the earth. And the word Yoreh, therefore, is milashon revaya. Revaya means satiation. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk in Pilim, Tlameha rave nachas duda. By saturating, its furrows, nachas geduda. It brings pleasure and benefit to bands and bands, gedudim, of people. Revivim, mognena, simcha tevarich. And with showers, you soften the earth, and its growth you bless. We see that the word Yoreh comes from the word marveh. And marveh means to saturate. Shenemar, and we quoted the Pasuk in Tehillim to prove this. Geshem marveh es talmei hacharicha sheba'aretz v'osa nachas ruach lebrios v'yidei haravivim, the motor dak, is tmogeg b'torate v'sadomo u'bazeh tevarech tzimcha. A third possibility as to the meaning of, and the etymology of the word Yoreh, sheyored benachas, that it falls gently, as opposed to Malkosh, which we'll see comes down more violently. And this is symbolic of a person who teaches his Talmidim benachas. V'eno yored b'zav. It doesn't fall with a strong violence. B'chazka. So Yora Lashon Hara, and here he has a note. It says Yora Hu Lashon Chetz Yora. Aholit B'yosh. It's symbolic of something that's very straight, like an arrow. Straight like an arrow. The Brisa asks the following question: how do you know to interpret all these drushes that the language, the word yored that's mentioned is lebrach? Oh, eno, perhaps yored is not lebracha, but ella, just the opposite. Hashom klol, that it causes the fruit that remains on the tree to be removed, to fall off the tree at the beginning of the Geshamim. Like, for example, esrogim, rimonim, certain types of ta'enim, where I have esrogim and pomegranates. We're talking about dates, figs, geshem meshira me'ailonos, that as a result of the geshem, they are removed from the tree. Umashtif, mashtif is lashon shotev, es hazroim, just washes away, the seeds. Umashtif es hailonos, and washes away the trees. Talmud Lomer Malkush. That's why right after the word Yoreh, the Torah used the word Malkush. And this gives us an equation between Yoreh and Malkush. Ma Malkush L'bracha. You can't say it's raw. You can't say it's raw because you can raise that possibly for Yoreh, but not for Malkush, because Malkush comes at the end of the period of the Geshamim. There are no peros left on the trees. There are no zroim that are, subterranean into the ground, but it must be lebrach. Yoreh, which appears in the same exact pasuk, this hekesh is lebrach. The Gemara still has a kind, still raises an objection. Oh, eno malko. You're assuming here that Malkush is L'bracha, and it cannot be L'klola, because as we said before, there are no Paris on the Lonos, but nevertheless, it is possible. It's Klola for a different reason, because it's Mapil es Habatim. He writes here that it is knocking down houses, Mishabri Lonos, breaking down trees, Umalis ha-skoyim, and raises locusts. Talmud Loma Yoreh. Now we're going to quote the pasuk of Yoreh, and we're going to make a hekesh from Malkush to Yoreh. Ma Yoreh lebracha af Malkush lebracha. Yoreh guf, how do you know that Yoreh is lebracha, not leklola? After all we said before, we derived that from a hekesh to Malkush, but now we're suggesting that even Malkush, because the heavy, violent rains, is leklola. So you're really involved here in a vicious cycle back and forth. So the Gemara answers, I'm going to quote you another source with regard to Yoreh to prove that it's lebracha, the Chsiv, because the pasuk says, "U'bnei Tzion kilu v'simchu b'Hashem Elokeichem." This is a pasuk in Yoel that refers to a miracle that no rain fell until the first day of Nisan. It was such a drought, and yet the entire season's produce grew in a few days. We mentioned this back on Daf Hey. V'simchu b'Hashem Elokeichem, and you be glad with God, your God. Inosan lachem es hamoreh litzdaka. V'yored lachem geshem moreh u'malkosh parish. The literal translation here is that the children of Zion will be glad. They rejoice in Hashem, for he has given you Yoreh as charity, with tzedakah, as chesed, this divine benevolence. The Yored lachem, and he has brought down for you Geshem, Yoreh and Malkosh in that very first month of Nisan. That was the great miracle that took place at the time of Yoed. So we see that Yoreh is considered like tzedakah. It's like a charitable gift from God. It's something beneficial. It's a benevolence of God. Yeah, we can prove that Malkosh is also a bracha because they're brought down together, Yoreh and Malkosh. We learned in the Bryce. And we talk about the pasuk in Osati mitar tzechem bi'ito Yoreh Malkosh. Yoreh b'mar Cheshvan, Malkosh b'Nisan. Yoreh are the first rains in Cheshvan, and Malkosh are the last rains at the end of the season in Nisan. Ataomer Yoreh b'mar Cheshvan, Malkosh b'Nisan, or Eino El Yoresh b'Titrei, Malkosh b'Nisan. Why don't we suggest another passage that the first rains already for Cheshvan in Titrei, because it's already time for Chag HaSukkos. We mentioned Kishavim. Therefore, maybe Yoreh is in Tishrei. That's right before Sukkot. Maschilim lahazkir es hagishavim. Malkosh be'iyar. And why would we postpone Malkosh until Iyar? And the answer is Kevan she ad chodesh Iyar adayin yesh melilos v'kashim v'sodas ukim u'geshem. There's still certain growths that are in need for geshem. Talmud lomar v'nasatim tartzem bi'ito. Yoreh emphasize the word bi'ito, and that's bisman atov haroy lehem. And that's Yom Cheshvan, that's the beginning of Shomim, and Malkosh Nisan, when the Sada has Melilos and Kashin Ram. Gemara now explains why is it that the last Geshem is called Malkosh. What's the meaning of the word Malkosh? We spent a lot of time on the meaning of the word Yoreh. Amar Avnei Hiloi, Bar Idi Amar Shmuel, Malkosh is no trikur. Davar Shemol Kashuseim Shel Yisrael. Something that mol, what does mol mean? Mol means when you have something hard and you want to soften it, that's called mol. And the hardness here is kishyoseim of Yisrael, which means that the Jewish people sometimes are, or if they have to do tshuva, and Malkosh symbolically brings about an attitude for tshuva. Now, why is that so? Because as we're waiting for Malkosh, and sometimes there's a drought, we feel inspired and motivated to do tshuva, because maybe that's why the rains are not falling. Now he says that Dover Achotech v'shover kochi erpam shel Yisrael. So these rains actually break the am kshe oref, the stiff neck of Israel. Chem ein yored chozim Yisrael b'tshuva misanem the osim tzedakah. To Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, again a different atrikim from Malkosh, Dover shemimale tfua b'kasheh shal yidei Malkush nishlemes gidul hatfua. So it descends on the ears and the stalks, and it brings about the hashlama of the gidule hatfua. B'maslisin Tana. Now he quotes a Bryce. Malkosh is not truken, davar sheyored al hamalilos. Something that falls on the ears and stalks. Alakash. Oz nimtzoy b'sodig hamalilos v'gamakash. Torah Rabban and Yorev and Machesh and Malkosh Nisan. Atomer Yorev and Malkosh o Eno Ella Yorev b'chodesh Kislev. And this represents the Shita of the Chachamim that argue on Rabbi Meir later on in a brisa. They hold man for Yeridas Yore is actually in Kislev, not in Cheshvan, but about a month later. This brisa on the other hand reflects the Shita of Rabbi Meir. Talmud Lomar Be'ito Yore u'Malkush. And again, we have the hekesh between Yore and Malkush. Ma Malkush, just like Malkush is Be'ito, is in the month of Nisan. Af Yore Be'ito in the month of Marchesh. Tanya Idach, we have another brisa as far as the Zman Yerida story of Malkush. Yore B'Marcheshvan, Malkush B'Nisan Divrei Rabbi Meir. Chachamim Omrim Yore B'Kislev. Man Chachamim, who the Chacham that hold that the Yeridas Yore is in Kislev. Rav Chizda Rav Yossi, Nisanya, Ezo He Revia Rishona. When it is the first rainfall of the rainy season, Abachira, the very first rainfall, is Bishlosha b'Marcheshvan, on the third day of Marcheshvan. Beinanis, it's already the second rainfall, is Shiva Bo on the 7th of Marcheshvan. Afila is the Revia Shlishis, Mucheres. It's the third and latest rainfall. Shiva Asar Bo on the 17th of Marcheshvan. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Revia Rishona b'Shiva on the 7th, not on the 3rd, but on the 7th. Revia Shnia is b'Shiva Asar on the 17th, which, if you remember, Rabbi Meir had identified the last of the three rains, Afila, on the 17th of Cheshvan. But here, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're talking about the second rainfalls on the 17th of Cheshvan. Everything is later, according to Rabbi Yehuda. We push it forward, so to speak. And when we get to the Revia Shlishis, it's the Esrim Ushlosha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's on the 23rd day of Marcheshvan. Now, I don't understand exactly how you can tell me on a regular basis exactly on what day the first rainfall fell, the second, the third. Rabbi Yossi over here, the first rainfall is B'Shivas. He's pushing it even beyond Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda pushed it to the 7th of Cheshvan. Now we're up to the 17th of Cheshvan. Ushnia B'Esrim Ushlosha. Now, that which was the last of the rainfalls, the final third rainfall, according to Rabbi Yehuda, now becomes, according to Rabbi Yossi, the second rainfall on the 23rd of Cheshvan. And now we're up to the third rainfall, the Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Right? Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which is 9. So we may, according to Rabbi Yossi, get a rainfall tonight, and that would be the first rain to open up the rainy season. And we've already had a little bit of rain, but not a real major rain to talk. Rabbi Yossi Omer, reflecting his sheet, the third rainfall is in Kislev. Ein hayechidim. Yechidim represents the Hasidim, the very pious Jews. Misanin, they don't start fasting in the absence of rain very early. Ad sheyagia Rosh Chodesh Kislev. If they see that there's no rains falling until Rosh Chodesh Kislev, then they're ready to fast. So it comes out that the Chachamim of the first price, who said that Yore's in Kislev, they reflect the Shita here in this price of Rabbi Yossi that the third of the rainfalls is in the month of Kislev. Now, all these three rainfalls are considered Yora meaning the first rains. And therefore, until this period of time passes, the pious people will not start fasting. Because again, we're talking about the early rains. So it's not until Kislev that, the rains should have certainly, the first rains, meaning the Yora rains, should have certainly have fallen. Now it's time to fast. It's not full. Amar Rav Chizda Allah Yossi, we pass in la halacha like Rav Yossi that Yeridas Shloshes Haravios, the 3 dates of the 3 first rainfalls are 17 of Cheshvan, 23 of Cheshvan, Rosh Chodesh Kislev. But on Meimer Masni Lahodar of Chizda Polish, maybe I had a different tradition as to how to formulate the words of Rav Chizda regarding this machlokes about Zmane, the Zmanim of the first 3 rains of Yoreh. And according to a Meimar, what Rav Chizda was talking about was the machlokes Tanoim in the Mishnah later on, Daf Yud. When do we begin asking for Gishavim, Bakosh Gishavim in Tefillah, saying Talamot Lefrach? And the Mishnah says, Bishloshim B'Marcheshvin, Sholem Ala Gishavim. As early as the 3rd day of Cheshvan, we begin asking Hashem, saying Talamot Lefrach for the rains. Let's wait till the 7th of Cheshvan. And on this Mishnah, we have Omar of Chizda Alocha Kram Gamliel, that we begin to ask for the Shavim on the 7th of Cheshvan. So that's how we pass. And Igloi Milsal Mafreya, retroactively, we begin to appreciate that this long-winded discussion about when the first rain, second rain, third rain, it's all relevant to Tefillah, to the law of Bakashas Kishavim, the same Talamot Vrach in the 9th Brach. Rav Chizda is accepting the Shita of Rav Yossi, and we have to figure out what is Rav Yossi and how does he relate to Rav Gamliel? Because Rav Yossi had said the first rain was on the 17th of Cheshvan. And here it says that Rav Gamliel Omer B'Shiva Bo. And yet it says, Omar Rav Chizda Lochik Rav Gamliel. So how do we reconcile these two statements of Rav Chizda? Do we pass like Rav Yossi or like Rav Gamliel? So, for example, if you would ask me, when would Rav Yossi begin to ask for Kshavim? Be on the 17th of Cheshvan. But here, Rav Chizda is paskening like Rav Gamliel at the first period of time for Shelos Kshavim. It's not the 17th, but rather the 7th. So Mr. Shem will have to see about that. There is a note over here, I just want to point it out. Revere Rishonim Yitzayim B'Cheshvan, Koter Yossi, Shnia B'Chav Gimel B'Cheshvan, Kislev, Kain Pasach Rambam. Oser Atzum Dover Ad Hageshem Ariza Oser Ad Zman Hageshamim Shuveretz Yisrael Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Igia Zman Hagesham Ariza Mutter Bein Yord Geshamim Bein Lo Yord. Ram passes like Rav Yossi. Now, once the Gemara brought these 3 opinions in the Brisa amongst the Tanoim about the Zmanim of the 3 first rains, now the Gemara quotes another Brisa It tries to figure out which of those three shittas is reflected in the Bryce. Kaman Azal Hadusanya, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Yeshamim Sheyardu Shiva Yomim Zecher Zeh, who had 7 consecutive days, non-stop of rain. Atomona Bahem, Revir Rishona Ushnia Ushlishis. You could consider it as if all 3 first rains have already fallen. Iman says the Gemara, that's Rabbi Yossi. It's only Rabbi Yossi's Shita where the period of time from the first to the last of these 3 Geshamim is within 7 days. Meaning we start with the first rain on the 17th of Cheshvan, and then we go fast forward to the second rain on the 23rd of Cheshvan. So from 17 to 23 is 6 days. And if you add also the 23rd itself, so you get 7 days. And from the second rain, which is on the 23rd of Cheshvan, to the third rain, which is on Rosh Chodesh, that's also 7 days. Whereas according to Rabbi Meir, the time period between the first rain and the third rain, the first rain being on Gimel Cheshvan, and the second on Zayin Cheshvan, is only 4 days. And the Hefresh, the amount of time that passes from the second rain on Zayin Cheshvan to the third rain on Yud Zayin Cheshvan is 10 days. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the difference between the first rain on Zayin Cheshvan and the second rain on Yud Zayin Cheshvan is 10 days. So therefore, all we're left with here is one possibility, and that's Rabbi Yossi's, the only sheet that works out within 7 days from the first to the third rains. Once again, the Gemara quotes the same statement that we had earlier. Amar Rav Chizda Locha ki Rabbi Yossi, which is very good because we just finished saying that this price reflects the sheet of Rabbi Yossi. He has a note here. Again. Okay, so the apparently different. So the Gemara now analyzes the nafkamina between the various zmanim of the rains, the first rains. Bishlema, I understand Revir Rishona. Lishon, that's going to be relevant as an nafkamina to begin She'elas Kishon and request from Hashem the same Talmud Uvracha. And the Shlishis, there's an nafkamina as far as Lis Anos, if Hashon, there was no rain until the time of the third rain. And this is going to be a reflection of what we see later on in Daf Yud, in Lo Yod, Kishon, and Revir Shlishis, is Timu Yechidim Lis Anos. However, Shnia Lamai, what nafkamina is it to be kover this man for the second rain? Amar Rav Zera Linidarim. This is going to be a nafkamina for Nidarim. Read the Mishnah of Nidarim. Isnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, now we're turning to Davav on the base, Hanoder Ad Hagishamim. He took a neder that would last until the time of the Geshem. For example, he says, Konam Nena B'Tov Ploni Ad Hagishamim. Or he asks something on himself, Ad Shu Gishamim. He's also in the Mishnah, Ad Shetered Revia Shniyah. Because in the Dharma we have a rule that Holchem Achar Loshen B'nei Adam, and people don't call the first rains Geshamim, because it's just the beginning of the season. Once they get to the second rain, then the rains have made their impact. They sort of disturb the drachim by making them very wet. And that's when that's how people identify Yisham. Rav Zvid Amar, he thinks that we need to identify the second Geshem. Why? For this man, that it would be mutter for them to harvest the matnas aniyim that were left in the fields. Like, for example, zaysin, olives. Snane me'masei kol adam mutarim v'leket v'shikha u'bepeah misha yelchu hanamushos. So the balabas or the ashirim are allowed to collect the shibolim that fell onto the karka, which is called leket, or shikha. There are omrim, there were piles that were forgot, or peah that's 1/60 in the corner, and they can collect the matnas aniyim that were left, and they don't have to be choshesh that the aniyim might come and want to collect them from the fields. And at what point is that? Mishiyelchan and Mushos. Get a literal translation of Mushos here. Those crawling rummagers. Rummagers meaning people who go through the field, see if anything was left. Those are called the Mushos. From the root word mishash, to feel. And once they have worked through the field, the other poor people give up hope of finding anything. They don't find anything that's left. Pratlo beperet ubiolos mishielchanim bekerem viavo ubezesim mishetered revia shnia. Mine mushos. Rabbi Yochanan, Sapi di Az Atigra, and Reish Lakish Lakute Basar Lakute. So here we have an answer to the question of what's the relevance of the second rain, because after the second rain, then we're allowed to take these matnas aniyim that were left in the field, and we can assume that the aniyim are not going to come around to collect any of this leket shikha peah. And at what point can the wealthy people, the ashirim, take the parrot of the olos? Mishiyelchu aniyim b'kerem v'yavo. The zaysim mishipeired revishni. So everything here leads up to zaysim, because the time in which we're allowed to take the zaysim, and we don't assume that any of the aniyim are going to come, it's the second rainfall. He says that once we get to the point where the rummagers have finished, then the aniyim give up hope. They don't expect to find anything else. The mushos took whatever was left in the field from the leket shikhu. From what time is an ashir is allowed to take parrot? Parrot is called gargurei anovim anoshim b'shas b'tzira. So these are part of the grapes that fall at the time of the harvest of the grapes. Certain gargarim. Biolos, which are eshkolos anovim, she'ein behem lo katev lo notev. And that's Mishiyelchu Haniyim Bekerem V'yavo. After the Haniyim Chazru V'loktu Pam Shnia Bakerem. Umikan V'elech Shar Haniyim Meisichem Es Daito Milovo El Akerem L'Lak. V'nisyashu Me'anovim Shenisharu Sham. And Me'emasai Mutarim Kol Odom L'Lake V'stei Seisim Kishiyere Revia Shnia. Why? Me'achar Shah shall revere shnia betuchim aniyim shekvar nilketu kol hazesin umisyashemim. Therefore, in halacha zu shana hatana esman revere shnia. Now we have Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about the meaning of the word nebushos.